Welcome to DowerChin.com. Today we're going to take a look at another enclosure from Startech.com. So what this is their dual 3.5-inch SATA NAS enclosure with RAID and USB 3. Okay, so what this is essentially it's just another RAID controller, but it has NAS capability. And what a NAS is, it's basically network attached storage. So you put two drives in it and you make it available over your network. So let's take a look at what we get in the box. So this time, Startech usually gives out various different cables. Typically they usually have a little brick with different ends, but it looks like what they did this time is they actually have full cables. So here's a US one, looks like a European one here. Let's see, we have Ethernet cable. And we have the Hong Kong British. And we have more cables. Let's see what else we got here. We got USB 3 connector, the unit itself, and what else do we have here? Alright, looks like we have a power brick. Okay, so, and feet for the enclosure, and finally the manual. So let's take a look at the unit itself. So you can see it's similar to some of the other ones that they have. It's alright, we got back here, we have our USB, we have different RAID settings here with the reset and set switches on off. We got the RJ45 Ethernet adapter port and a DC in and a fan. And so it looks like, unlike some of the other ones that were screwless, this one actually looks like you might have to take a screw out in order to get the enclosure to come off. So I'll stop this video for now and we'll go and get familiar with it, and we'll start putting some drives in and see what it's like. Alright, so here I have side by side the NAS RAID controller, and then this is my other one, which is the RAID controller with the fast charge USB 3 hub built into it. As you can see, the NAS one's actually a little bit smaller, and the one thing that's also obviously different is the previous one has a toolless entry where you can just kind of pop the front lid off and get to the drives. So on the NAS one, I put the feet on. I put they're optional, and in order to get to the drive bay, you gotta undo this one screw at the bottom to basically take the opening off. All right, and so what I have here are two brand new 4 terabyte Western Digital RAID drives. And if you're not familiar with the RAID drives are meant to be used in network application servers or RAID enclosures of up to multiple drives, 6 or 8 drives, and I'm only doing 2. So I'm going to put them in. As you can see, there's no extra hardware involved. The drive just kind of slides into the space here, and 2 is on top and 1's at the bottom. Just that easy. And now this becomes a very dense little module because the drive's awful heavy. Alright, so I'll close that up and we will put the screw back in. Okay, there. So now, looking in the back, we have to set our RAID modes. Now, by default, the unit comes in JBOD, just a bunch of disks, and I'm going to use mirroring. If you've seen my other videos about enclosures and stuff, I always like to use mirroring just because I like to actually have the redundancy and the sort of security of having 2 drives replicated, so that if something goes wrong with one, it basically, I can get my stuff and not have to worry about losing it. So here's the power brick. I plugged it into the US connector, and we'll plug this in. So in order to set the RAID, you have to set it up first, and that's going to wipe everything out on the disk. So that's something to be aware of, is that when you change the modes, it's going to basically clear the disks out. Now it's a little bit confusing, is that there's 2 power buttons, one in front, one in back. One over here is already set to on. I have to hold the set down while I turn it on in order to set the RAID mode. So I got it clicked in the back here. I'll turn it on. Let's let it go, and Should be set, I believe. All right, so it's booting up. And what we'll do now is we'll just plug it into a computer system and see how it works, and then we'll also go and see if we can use it on the network. All right, so I have my Surface Pro 3 over here, and I'm going to directly hook it up with the USB 3 cable just to see, make sure everything is working appropriately before I even attempt to do anything on the network. I need to format them, so I'll go to the Manage, and I'm going to go to the Disk Manager over here, and we'll see that it sees that disk 1 is unallocated, which it is because it's not set up yet. And we'll just do the defaults, and we'll just take the GPT partition. I'll hit OK. And now it's unallocated over here. So now we'll right click on it and we will do a new simple volume. Next, I'll take all the defaults, assign to drive E, that's fine. And I'm gonna format this as exFAT, just so I can ensure that I can use it on my Mac without any issues. I'll call this Startech. And we'll perform a quick format. And I'll finish it off. Alright, there we have it. It is now ready. So it's all empty. As you can see in the disk management here, there is only one drive. Even though there's two disks, it only sees disk 1 as being a little less than 4 terabytes, 3.75 terabytes. And that's because after it's formatted, that's what you're usually left with. And so it doesn't see multiple drives, it just sees that one. And that's exactly how it should be. Okay, so now we're going to plug this into an Ethernet cable and get it on my network and see what happens. So before turning anything on, I'm going to plug this in the back. And we'll turn that on. Then we'll turn the power on over here. So something I found out earlier when playing with this device is you'll notice that this little home icon here, it beeps, and now it's going to blink red. So what this I found out means is that it's detected that it's on an Ethernet. Even though I formatted it in Windows, it is not ready to use as a media server or a network attached storage device. So I'm going to go to a computer and we'll access this via the network, and you'll see what I mean. Alright, so I'm on my Mac here, and before we get started I wanted to make a mention that there's a little quick start manual that comes with the device in the box. Isn't really that good. There's something that's very confusing about it that I ran into, is that their network setup was a little weird and it didn't make much sense. It didn't work. And I went to their website, and I suggest you do this too if you actually have this, is get their manual. This is the full manual, and I have it open over here. And this is the part for the NAS setup that wasn't clear in the little setup guide. The setup guide actually wanted you to do the step 2 thing, which was kind of weird. We had to change your default IP address to this in order to get to this, and it didn't really quite work right. So this actually works better. So the NAS is hooked up to my network with the cable, and it's got the little home light's blinking, kind of like a purplish color there. And so I'm going to go and grab this URL, and basically all it is the model number of the unit, and I'm going to paste it in here. There's a space in there though, so watch out for that. And so now I'm going to log into it, and the defaults are admin. And so log in. So now this is interesting. So now notice that it says here that the hard disk is not formatted, and it wants me to format it now. But if you recall, I plugged it into my Windows machine earlier, my Surface Pro 3, and with the disk management, and formatted it there. So, but it wants me to do it again here. So I made the mistake of doing that, and what happened was, I guess if you format it from a computer system, it isn't really a network attached storage device. Once you hook it up this way, the network portion of it wants to reformat the drive. And so if you had anything on the drive, like I did, it's going to be gone. So I'm going to OK this, and it takes a moment to do so, and now it's format successful. It tells me that it takes me to this disk management section here and tells me that my drives are good and gives me information about it. So it's freshly formatted. So anything that was on the drive is gone. So something to be wary about is that before you really start using this thing, and if you actually have any intention of using this as a network attached storage device, do set it up first before putting anything on it. So now that it's set up and it's blank, I can go to that same URL there and there are options here. You can look at folders. I can look at MP4s or MP3s. MP4s are videos. Now it says it only supports MP4s here, and I think that might be just for the video playback if you want to play back in a browser. So what you can do now is you can, from say the Finder here, I can go and connect a server, and I can put in that address. And what should happen is now if I put in the admin, now the public folder mounts. So as you can see, this folder here is available, and I can now put stuff in here if I want to. So actually, let's go do that. Let's go and connect a server. I'll go to actually my computer that I do work with. Oops, not that. So I'll log in and go to my blog videos here. And so here I are. So I have all these videos. These are all some of the ones I've been working on for a while. And like say I'll go to my Jellycomb one here. And there's a small one, an MP4 file for my last review for my Jellycomb touchpad. I'll copy it into the public folder. And I'll give it a moment to copy over. Okay, so now it's here. So now if I go back to the web browser, I can go to the videos and let's see. Does not see it. Why? Well, not sure why, but it's there, so I can play it here. So we see that at least shared wise. I can see it. So basically I can attach it as storage, as a mounted drive, and put files on it, and it should work fine. Let me just refresh this. Maybe it just hasn't seen it. Oh, okay. If I go to if I go into public folder, I can see that the MP4 file is there. And okay, well now it sees it. All right, so I was in the wrong folder. Oh, I see. Okay, so you have to go from here, navigate into it in order to see it. So here I have it. And see the MP4 plays. This might be more of a browser issue than anything else. The MP4 is not playing properly here. I hear the audio, but it's not playing the video side of it. But we know that it works because if I go here, I can run the file and it does work. Yeah, so it does work. Now the other things you can do with this thing, if you get out of this piece here in the settings, like if you don't, that name, that S352BMU3N, isn't very memorable, so you can go to the settings and change them here. So first things first, you look at the status. I can take the status of everything here. Gives you the ID, the admin password or login here, name of the host name here, which you can change. That's probably one of the first things you want to do, so it's something a bit more memorable than this ridiculous number. And the firmware. Now something I did find here on the Startech website, there is an updated firmware here. Let's say it's version 1.5i3, and if I can judge by what I have here, it's not right, or at least it's not updated. So I have to probably update the firmware. So you may want to think about doing that too if you have not done so already. Other things to look at real quick is the disk information. So it shows that that I am in a RAID1, which is exactly what I want. Plenty of free space on it, and it's exFAT, which is important because that's why it works on a Mac. Network-wise, it gives you information about your IP settings and stuff. If you really wanted to have a static IP address, you can do that if you want to. Seems like you can do it right there. And so we can disk manager. You can format the disk here if you wanted to. It gives you the RAID status over here, or you can change the RAID modes. But if you change the RAID modes, it's going to erase the drives. And you can do firmware updates. You can reboot and shut down the device. And here's an interesting one. You can actually set up accounts. So if you didn't want to use the admin all the time, you can set them up and you can create folders for things as well. So you have lots of options with this device, and so far it seems like it works pretty well. Now the one thing to consider is that the one thing that the document tells you about is that the NAS does not work in network and USB 3 mode at the same time, which means I just can't go and plug this thing right into my Mac with the provided USB 3 cable. I have to shut down the device and restart it again and in order to plug it in, but it can't work as both, so I'll have to disconnect it from the network in order to do that. So let's go do that now real quick. I'm going to first of all, I'm going to dismount, eject this because sometimes Finder gets really upset if I do not do that and suddenly it's gone from the network. Alright, so I'm going to turn the drives back on. I plugged it in directly to the computer now via the USB 3 cable. And it's sitting right next to my Mac here. As it starts up. Alright, it beeps and it should start mounting in a moment. Okay, so we see that it mounted. It's untitled and Time Machine wants to use it. I don't want to use it. So we're going to go into it and we see that in a moment there's this public folder. And inside the public folder, interesting. The video I put in there, oh, there it is. Okay, it's just slow to come up. Okay, there it is. So there's the video. And I can start playing it back over here, and everything is normal. So it does work. Just that one thing, before you can use it again as a USB 3 hard drive, you have to ensure that it's basically, first off, be sure it's set up for the NAS first, so that because wants to erase the hard drives. And now that it's set up, it now can run as a NAS and a USB 3 hard drive, but it can't do both simultaneously. So it's a very important point. So, all right, so we're going to look at pulling the drives on this thing and see how well it works. Okay, so I'm going to unplug this thing and remove one of the drives so that we can simulate a drive failure. Oops, oh, there's that. Okay, I'll just take this 2 out. Set this to the side. And let's reassemble the unit. Well, actually, let's not bother. There's no really need to reassemble the unit. Let's just go and plug it in, turn it on, and see what happens. Okay. Power on, hit the power button. Let's put this one back on, yeah. So we see from the LEDs that this too has a failure. And oh, we got a beep. So it's a tone, which I'm guessing is indicating that we have a drive failure of some kind. And I'm guessing it's going to be this way and make this noise until I replace the drive. So let's actually see what it looks like and see if the videos I put on here are accessible from a system while this thing is wailing. Okay, so I'm going to turn the drive on. I have it hooked up directly to a cable to the computer system, and it's just still start wailing at me. I want to see if it actually mounts on the system and giving you access to the files on there. As you can hear, it's wailing away. All right, good. Okay, we can see that it still comes up. Public folder is still there. The videos I put in here are still there. Here's a WMV file I had. There's that Jellycomb one I was looking at before. This still plays. So everything still seems to work. I can have access to my files. And if you can bear the horrible wailing this thing's making, then you definitely know something's wrong. And at least the files are still accessible. So let's see what it looks like on the network with the web interface. Okay, so now I moved the unit away from here, but you still hear it. It's on another desk right now. And we'll go and pull up the web interface for it. Alright, log in. Alright, so it really looks like it's normal here. I go to the folders, Go to public, videos I made it put everything in the folder there. So things are there, looks like. And let's just go and look at the settings real quick here, see what it sees. Status wise, I'll go to status, this is what we see here. Nothing really indicates any problems on this page. Disk status, okay, this is where we see nothing in particular. Service information, nope. So it's funny. Aside from the horrible noise that this unit is making, it's hard to see if there's anything going on. Let's look at RAID, the disk management here. Alright, so disk management now only shows one disk. Before I had two. Alright. And I guess over here, RAID, okay, this is where we actually see the problem. Under RAID status, you see it as RAID1, but it's degraded. So that's the key. So it shows me that something is wrong with my RAID drive now. Because aside from the, the horrible noise it's making here, it basically is not happy. Unfortunately, it's kind of disconcerting that the status over here doesn't show me anything. And so if this was in like a totally different room or in a basement somewhere, I may or may not hear it, although it is pretty loud and annoying. So it definitely lets me know something's wrong. But over here, it doesn't really give me a whole lot of information for the disk. So and it wasn't not until you get to the system management where you go here that you see something's wrong. So all right, so we'll shut this down and we will. Well, let's see. I'll put the disk back in and let's see what happens. What it does after I put the disk in. All right. So now that we know what the unit does when it detects a drive failure, let's go put the disk back in. And what most enclosures do, and like some of the other Startech ones I've used, it should begin to rebuild itself. So this time I'll put this back on since I probably won't be taking it out again. Hopefully I won't have to. Put this back in. Okay, now let's plug this in. Let's see what happens with the unit by itself. Alright, turn the switch on, and then turn this one on as well. Okay, so now it's blinking, sort of like what it was when it wasn't set up correctly. Okay, here we go. All right. So that's something new. So now this drive is blinking, and I'm going to assume that it's just rebuilding itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut this down, and while it's rebuilding, I'm going to pop it into the USB port, and also take a look at via network, and let's see what the statuses say. Alright, so back on my Mac here, I'm going to turn this drive back on. I've hooked up via the USB cable. Okay, so beep once. And the LEDs are blinking. And the unit is available, so I can see the files I had on here earlier. So everything still plays just fine, skipping around. And so the unit is rebuilding at the same time, because the second drive is blinking, and I'm able to access the files. So alright, so the next thing to do is I want to see what the network version says. Alright, so I have the drive hooked up via Ethernet now, and I just turned it back on. Alright, so it beeps once, so it tells me that it probably warns me that it's something wrong and it's got to do some work. So let's go see if we can access the drive via the network. Let's see if it will do anything. Alright, there. Okay. And the default admin. Alright, good. Everything looks like it's here. Let's go to the folder real quick. And let's go to the videos folder. Alright. It shows me the MP4 files I had in there, so that's okay. And then now let's go to the settings. Let's see what the status says. Let's go to disk status. Alright, so it doesn't really show me anything else that's particular about it. That's sort of the same as it was before. But let's go to the system management. Let's go to RAID. Alright, so here we go. This is where it's important. Now it says rebuild. So it does indicate that the RAID is rebuilding now. So And if we go to the disk management, now it sees 2 disks, which is good. That's exactly what I want. So it shows that the disks are fine now. Of course, with the RAID being rebuilt, there's not a whole lot I can do. Just wait until the system finishes rebuilding itself, which can take anywhere between an hour to 2 hours probably. So I'll let the drives run for a bit, and we'll come back to it once it's done. It took a while, probably several hours. I let it go overnight because it was taking quite a long time. And probably it has a lot to do with the fact that they're 4 terabyte drives, and it's going to go through and probably sector by sector replicate the drive, so it takes a while. I moved it back over here so I can show you when turning it back on what it looks like now. So I can turn it on. Now the home light will stay this color because obviously it's not hooked up to anything, so it doesn't see it on a network. So it beeps once, and of course this is flashing because it is not hooked up to anything. It's not hooked up either USB or via the Ethernet. So the lights are now stable, so the drives are now replicated, and we're back to normal. Alright, so now that we know that the drives are all now functioning as according to the LEDs in front, I've powered the system back on and put it back on my network. So let's go take a look at the system, and once we log in again, we can go to the settings here, configuration. Let's do it again. Configuration. Come on, I was thinking about it. Okay. All right, there we go. Not sure why it froze up there, but okay. So once we're here, we can go back to the system management, take a look at the RAID, and now the RAID is normal. And that's what we want. So now it indicates that everything's properly set up. All right, so I'm going to conclude this video by doing a benchmark. Now I hooked up the Startech NAS enclosure here to my Retina MacBook Pro, which has USB 3 ports on it, and I'm going to run a Blackmagic disk speed test. Now, my confession here is that I'm not a big benchmark guy, so I can't say exactly how good this is going to be, but for those that like to look at benchmarks, hopefully this will be at least somewhat informative for you. So I'm going to basically do a 1 gigabyte stress test on the drive, and we'll hit start and we'll see what it does. So hopefully for those of you that do like to follow benchmarks, this can give you at least some indication of whether you think it's going to be something good for you to use to basically have it as an addition to your arsenal of tools and accessories. So if you have any questions about this enclosure, I did kind of a long-winded look at using the enclosure as both a network attached storage as well as direct storage like this right here. Took it through a simulated failure of a disk, rebuild, and for the most part it looks like it works just fine. And it's a nice little enclosure. It's not really large. It's not overly loud. It has a single fan on it, which seems to work okay. But once again, rebuild times will vary depending on how big your disk is going to be. But in general, this is a kind of a nice enclosure to have. So if is there anything I did not cover or things you want to see, feel free to leave me comments or ask me some questions. I'll do my best to answer them. So there you have it, a look at Startech's NAS USB 3 enclosure. Thanks for watching.